Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Know the Faith, Defend the Faith. My name is William Hemsworth. Great to be with you all again for today's episode. Pleased to have my guest here, Dominic De Souza. He's the founder of smartcatholics.com. Dominic, how are you doing today?
I'm good, William. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure. I've been meaning to ask you on for quite a while, and life got in the way, and I finally got around to it, so I'm glad I did. So, smartcatholics.com. So before we get into that, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, maybe about your background in faith and how it all led to Smart Catholics?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's actually such a fun discussion. And I'm planning on turning it into a book. But
Okay.
I'm fortunate to be a cradle Catholic and ended up traveling all over the world, kind of an accidental world traveler. So I was fortunate to experience all kinds of different experiences of what it is to be Catholic, like in Australia, Fiji. I tell you, masses in Fiji are so different to the first world West, and they're beautiful, just so different. So a lot of these different experiences from an early age, like Byzantine rites, Ukrainian rites,
Nice.
Latin rites, and so on. And I think it planted a whole bunch of seeds of trying to see the big picture of the Church Universal. I think that we can get stuck in our own culture, not by any fault of our own. So I think that set me up for seeing beyond my immediate experience. And so as I started getting older, started trying to sink my teeth into what was going on in the world, going on in the church, and of course what was going on in me as I was getting older and trying to mature. I started challenging some of the suppositions that had just been sort of passed down and began to realize that what it takes to be a Catholic in the modern world is a bit different than what we could get away with or what was normal, 50, 60 years ago. There's a big shift in all kinds of ways. And so that started a personal journey for me especially the last 10 years. I began to really fall in love with being Catholic and not be Catholic because I was afraid of God. That was sort of the first half of my life was, Catholic guilt, sin management, how far is too far, and then beginning to realize I'm looking at it wrong. I need to now operate from a place of loving God. How do I do that? And so then that started this whole journey into, how do I love Scripture? How do I love the Catechism? And then right as COVID hit this past year and a half now, I was given an opportunity to help host some conferences. And so I figured, well, let's just have a little more fun than just a conference. Let's see if we can launch a community. And Smart Catholics was an idea that emerges right out of my own journey. Our age is an age of smartphones and smart devices. And well, how could Catholics kind of be smart that way too? With everything going online, how do we be a part of the digital continent, as digital natives? And without losing our identity, but still enter into that dialogue with everything else going on and show ourselves to be people who enjoy life. And I think for me, that was a big thing because there was a lot of apocalypticism in my family. And I bit into that. I bought into that. And I plotted out the apocalypse, because I wanted to be sure I made it through. And I was pretty sure I was going to. And then I got hit on the head with a couple of life moments and, started to mature and began to realize, I think we're doing it wrong. Counting down to the kingdom is not the way the church is put together. We're supposed to be building the kingdom. And so there we go. That's my journey moving forward, trying to figure out how do we be Catholic in the modern world? How do we enjoy the journey as much as possible? Take that joy, that renewed sense of hope. And I hope to try to figure some of it out so I can pass it on to my little girl. So she's 7 years old as of this recording. So I think if I can figure it out, I know that there's a lot of other people who are on the same kind of journey, same kind of questions. And yeah, taking into account the universal church and starting to think like this global community, which is something that the church is still beginning to figure out. And we as humans are just tackling for the first time very seriously in human history. So a lot of things are up in the air.
Okay. So was Smart Catholic something that was germinating before COVID hit, or was it just all of a sudden like you had this idea?
all of it had been germinating for 10 years. The name hadn't. I think I grabbed that because the domain was available, and I liked the idea of putting the word smart and the word Catholic together, largely because Catholicism is never, I can't recall seeing Catholicism portrayed in media as a smart, intellectual, life-giving, encouraging, beautiful thing. It's always Frollo from The Hunchback of Notre Dame, or Spock, right? Reserved, the Great Inquisition, or I like to call it the Great Imposition. We go around shoulding on people. You should do this, you should do that. And there's, my challenge is that I love marketing. So I'm always looking for, in this, my line of work is, how do I help people sell stuff? And I was falling into this trap of, if we could just figure out a way to market the church, it would work. And then I came across this line from Pope Francis, where he's like, we have to stop thinking that way. That is not how evangelization works. Evangelization works from witness, before words, from lives well lived, so that when people then ask, what is the reason for the hope that is in you? But they've seen that hope and that joy first. So I began to realize, okay, I need to go back to the drawing board. And, how do we be smart? Because we have to be intellectual. We have a phenomenal intellectual history. But we also have to be magnetic, and we also have to take action. I mean, people also have to enjoy being with us, and we have to not be passive about just who we are as people, our role in the church, and so on. So you got to start somewhere. So I just picked smart because I think I'd watched, what was it, season 1 of Star Trek or something. And I feel like the church is in a place right now in history where she's helping us we have to look ahead to like a brighter future. And I think Star Trek kind of did that for a generation in the middle of the Cold War, when we were so done. We were so tired of nuclear fallout and bombs and mutually assured destruction. And I think Gene Roddenberry, came up with, like, we need to imagine 1,000 years into the future. We've gotten past all of this, and it's bright, and it's sort of, beautiful, and lens flares, and we're bringing good things out to everyone. We're discovering the good things of the universe. I may be grossly oversimplifying, and I'm not really a Trekkie, but that's the sort of feel that I get, that Vatican II tried to reignite in the church's mission, and then in a particular way, the Holy Father is like, we have to do things in a bit of a different way than we have in the past. And
right.
So again, it's been a journey for a long time. It just needed a particular sort of match to take off.
Like you said, with Vatican II, Lumen Gentium, how do we evangelize a modern culture?
Yeah.
And I think that's something Smart Catholics is definitely working on. Now, what were some of the pitfalls that, I guess, the growing pains, if you will, of Smart Catholics when you first started?
Probably me.
Okay.
So because it's all, it all emerges out of my time and my interests. It's limited by what I can do and what I can see at the time. So it started as, just as a way to create conferences. I mean, that was the need in early-ish 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And after the first couple of conferences, I thought, well, what if this was a brand that helped create podcasts? Because I loved listening to podcasts. I thought, what if we could help a lot more Catholic speakers create them? And then, so I started building the brand around that. I had no intent of building a community. I thought it could be like a lifestyle, because I sort of intended it to be my lifestyle. It's how I like to think about things. And then just conference after conference just started happening, and people kept reaching out, and it just seemed to be working, and people were hungry for it. And so we ended up doing that for most of the year. We put on, like, I think it was 12 different conferences, and
it was quite a bit.
Couple of others. There was a lot. And one of the things that then emerged was, we're bringing all these people together and they want to stay in touch. So we ended up building the community. But in terms of like the challenges, some of the first challenges that I started to identify out the gate was, people want to trust that they're getting good stuff, that there are all kinds of Catholic groups. And as we saw, as 2020 wrapped up, the division and the hysteria online, it just reached levels that we'd never anticipated. I think we always expected that, most of people would be sort of civil, and there was a common sort of tissue that connected all people together. And, but I think we began to realize with a lot of social networking that there is none of that. There is none of that that's in play. And I think we scrubbed a lot of that from, civil discourse, from how we come together as a culture, as a community in the first world. We get a lot of our media that isolates and divides for clicks and eyeballs and so on. So that is a very serious problem, because if we can't even talk to each other, even with the greatest conviction about differing ideas, if we still can't talk to each other at all without being convinced the other side is going to completely destroy the planet, then we've done a serious disservice to the future, to ourselves. And so we need to find a new option. So this was completely a reflection of my own attitude growing up. I was convinced that fringes in the church were going to destroy things, and I was going to help save the church, and I was part of the chosen few and so on, to then realize, oh my goodness, all of this sort of reactionary mind frame that I was in is very Catholic light. Everything I've been, condemning the other side for, well, really there isn't a side. There's technically no right and left. There's a center and there's a fringe, and it's all a spectrum. How close are you to Christ? And Christ is at the center. So doing that just made me realize I need to change my attitude, and I need to figure out what's my way of responding to it. How can I be this first responder, which is a word that started growing. If, as Pope Francis puts it, if the church is like a field hospital, this sort of big lazaretto for everybody, to take care of binding wounds and healing people, then how do we start being first responders to reach people on the fringes, to be that frontier of witness and words? I don't know I don't have all the answers. And I think that's kind of the point of Smart Catholics is we recognize we're coming together to try to figure it out, because there aren't very many places online that do with the one thing that anchors us, which is union or connection to the Holy Father. And again, that comes back to my big question, my big challenge was there's a lot of division, and a lot of it centers around who he is, how he approaches stuff. And I confess, the more that I dug into it, the more I read him, what he said in his own words, the more I'm coming to know him on his own terms, as opposed to the headlines and the retweets. The more confidence I have in him, the less the sort of fear, and I'm not really convinced by a lot of the mongering, whatever you want to call it. And so it just made sense to me that if we're going to call ourselves 100% Catholic, well, we can't separate ourselves from the Pope, because that ends up in Protestantism. So however difficult it may be, we have to, not dump Jesus for Judas. And I think this is where it comes to that sense of being a mature, discerning Catholic. So that's why I say it comes back to, how do we be smart? Because we have to engage our brains, but how do we also be magnetic? We can't lose that sense of wanting to be present to other people wanting to enjoy being with us. And again, that also comes out of my past, was I would be very hard-nosed with a lot of things. I turned people off, and I took pride in ticking them off. That's not a good witness. And so I needed to turn that around. And then the first responder idea, again, my own fear of doing anything, and just really because of not knowing how, and partly because I was animated by the wrong things. If you believe most of the world is doomed, you're not really going to do anything to help it. So turning that idea around, trying to see Christ in the other, in every circumstance, it's a complete sea change in attitudes. So again, I'm I think Chesterton is apparently credited with having said, when someone asked him what's wrong with the world, and he said, me. And I think I'd say the same thing. And that's why I started Smart Catholics, is because I know I'm not alone. I know there's a lot of other people out there who grapple with all of these things and then how to do it in the modern context. But once I dialed in those three ideas, smart, magnetic, and first responder, then there really weren't any other big issues. Simply by doing that and saying, we're going to create a community that's free of toxicity and trolls and ads. We're united to the Holy Father, and we're coming together in a culture of kindness and learning. And those are three non-negotiables. It's been phenomenal for the last 7 months. We just put a flag in the sand, and those who didn't like it just don't join. And those who do have been absolutely wonderful. I've met some of the most wonderful people in my life through this community, and I've made friends I never thought I could make. I'm a homebody. I'm stuck at home. I'm also I work from home. But then COVID, a lot of people couldn't get out, and all of a sudden now there's thousands of people that I probably have never ever met from all over the world, and they're meeting each other, they're encouraging each other, and then the wonderful speakers like yourself who ended up participating in the conferences, and the different speakers or creators who align themselves with this same mentality that it doesn't matter kind of what spectrum you're on or what side you're on, if we can't at least talk to each other with a culture of kindness and be able to have coffee with the person we're talking to, however much we disagree, if we can't at least do that, then well, we have to do that and have to get back to that. And that's what this community does. It's a bit of a home away from Facebook. And we're trying to create this contribution to the world.
You talk about a home away from Facebook. I've had a lot of friends leave Facebook over the past few months, and they pretty much have adopted Smart Catholics as the only platform they go on.
I'm honored, and I'm a bit terrified. And it's funny. I've seen people come in and they'll post, "Woohoo, I did it. I've nixed all my other accounts, and this Smart Catholics forever." And I don't use social media that much. I haven't really for the last couple of years. But let me throw the caveat out there for those who are. First, thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to have you, and so on. And I'm in there every day. But it's built as a place to regroup. It's not a place to retreat from the world. And I think there have been a lot of different communities that have been started for all kinds of reasons. I think that it is very important to make friends. I mean, friends are the family that you choose. And it is important to, up to a point, surround yourself with a bubble of people who think like you to reinforce you. But the challenge then is to not stay in that bubble. Yes. And I think for many, all kinds of reasons, I don't know if you've seen that Netflix show, The Social Dilemma, but it highlights how a lot of the way social networking is built today is very simply they need to sell ads. I mean, that's how they make money. So they point at you all of the angelic power of an AI to track you, pay attention to you, and give you exactly what you want or what you engage with. So that means there are 1 million people on Facebook. That means there's 1 million different feeds. My wife and I see completely different feeds. So we're not all connected. And again, coming back to that sort of culture that connects us all, the narratives are all different. And the AI doesn't care what's true or false. It just gives you what you want and what you interact with. And so fake news is just, at first, I just thought it was kind of a joke. But then to begin to realize, no, there are businesses that literally sit down and do nothing but craft lies. I mean, there's lies where you're trying to do something, for political reasons or twisting things, but to just sit down and do nothing but create garbage because an AI will pick it up and a subculture will buy into it. And conspiracies have just exploded.
Yeah.
Purely because AIs have, will just feed them and just, related video, next thing. And you end up on these rabbit holes. And so you're right. A lot of people, I think, are disillusioned with the initial promise of social media to be the world's marketplace or to connect people together. And but again, we can't run away from the world. We can't retreat from it. There are some who can. some who are called to do that, hermits or homeschooled families. For a time, you need to get away and refit yourself, refind yourself, but to stay away, I think is, I'm not convinced that that's for everybody. And so that's why Smart Catholics is a place to regroup, make friends, and then maybe go out and find those friends out on the other networks, to turn around our impression of them. I like the one phrase from the one show that was like, if we abandon ship, we leave all the idiots in charge, and then it's our fault if it sinks. So we're all in this together.
Absolutely. Well, so you talk about Smart Catholics has been around since 2020. I guess, how has it grown member-wise? I mean, you started off with conferences and all that, and it's grown to so much. It's grown to so much more. What's going on at Smart Catholics now?
Yeah, as of this video right now, it's kind of plateaued, and I've turned around and focused more on cementing the community together, trying to help us actually meet each other. So we went through that initial growth phase. We were pushing everybody who joined conferences to come on in and meet each other. And then with early 2021, first quarter, stopped doing as many conferences and started trying to focus now on who's in here and what can we start doing together, and what's the point of this community, and what's the point of this brand, because now there's more questions coming in and people are spending more time and so on. So one of the first things that we did was we launched a little internal magazine called Smart Catholics Insider, to bring us all together at least once a month around any big announcements and stuff happening in the community, because we have a number of speakers and creators who are running their own groups in there, and they're always doing interesting things like podcasts or events. But just as importantly is the sense of, how do we help people start thinking like smart magnetic first responders? And so I started crafting a series of articles, and I try to release one each month. And then what started becoming very clear was every month the church celebrates a particular theme. So that's now what we do each month with the Insider is, how do we start thinking about the theme of this month within the Smart Catholics mindset? So that if when we enrich ourselves and we think a little bit differently about these topics, then we can go out and be a little more interesting to other people and have something a little more interesting to share. So we're now hitting, well, this next week will be the 4th issue of that. And it's just been really, really wonderfully received. So I'm very happy about that. And then what we did second little magazine we launched was called Outlooks. And it was a way to bring together everything that different speakers like yourself who are creating things throughout each month. So I bring them together as a roundup and then just share them with the community. So they've got like one place to see what's going on and be inspired by all the different outlooks from people who support the community. So those have been two of the big things to try to cement the community together. And then I've got two bigger projects that I've been working on that take a little more time. One is launching an academy, because with that operative word smart, it's important that we have to keep learning. And again, the community has, I think, a pretty unique mission. It's inspired by groups like, Where Peter Is and their dedication to the Holy Father, and Bishop Barron was a huge part of my sort of reversion or conversion journey into wanting to be more deeply Catholic. Their attitudes towards how to interpret what's going on in the church, how to be Catholic in the modern age, and so on. I'm trying to build, in a way, the community that sort of sits in between this and of course, under the other group, Catholic Answers, and all of their phenomenal apologetics work. Mm-hmm. So creating something that sort of sits in the middle of that. And then what is our contribution to the world? How do we continue reaching more people? And obviously, one of the key ways is continuing to provide a place for thought leaders and speakers to continue sharing what they're good at, sharing what they excel at in their messages. And so that's what the Academy is intended to be for. Kind of like creating webinars, lots and lots of webinars, and people can tune into what they like, and then the replays go on YouTube afterwards. And then the other thing, which I'm looking forward to launching sooner, is a way to, it's like a little membership community within Smart Catholics. So we've got the free community, and everybody's welcome to come on in, make friends, add all the different groups to your memberships. We've got our own Bible in a Year where people are following along with Father Mike Schmidt. And so there's a section of us doing that as a group. There's a daily gospel readings group where people just share their reflections every day about what's happening in the readings of the Mass. There's a variety of other awesome ones. But the membership community, that is intended to be a place for us to double down and start focusing on creating content, building the YouTube channel so that we can start reaching more people and having more conversations. And a key part of that is going to be what's going on in the church liturgical year. So conversations about what does the church celebrate this month and how to think about that as a smart magnetic first responder. And then what is happening in the season of the church, like we're going through Lent right now or ordinary time right now. And I'll confess, I'm partly doing this because I never paid attention to any of this stuff before. I mean, Father would talk about it at Mass, at the homily, and there it is in the bulletin, but I was just busy in life and so on. But there's a reason the church gives this to us, and we're called to be entering into this. But how do we do it? Well, that's kind of what I'd like to dig into with by collaborating with creators and speakers and the members of our community who really want to be a part of this little membership community. This is the chance for them to help me, have these conversations, because I will straight up confess, I'm not a theologian. I'm a college and a high school dropout, but I absolutely love my faith. And I've spent the last 10 years doing a heck of a lot of reading. And that's kind of my thing. I now want to share what I love, but I now want to introduce people to what others are doing out there. And just as importantly, there's all these wonderful speakers who are kind of stuck at home and don't know sort of how to get out and do stuff, either because they're just incredibly busy and they just need someone to show up and say, hey, I'll create an opportunity to do a live stream. Let's create a show and let's just have conversations together. And then let's basically give it all away for free to keep helping the world. And this little community will help us contribute this. Again, like I say, I think it's a new and unique kind of thing, how to be smart, magnetic, and proactive in our own ways. And I think that's really the big thing there is we can't all be this one particular kind of Catholic. Every single one of us is created to be a unique mission to the world. And we have to sort of discover what that is. And sometimes you just need the permission to step back and discover who you are, not try to fit into someone else's stereotype or what your parish council is encouraging you, what your friends are telling you should be. Who are you? What is your personality type? What interests you? What does God want you to contribute to the world? We ran a conference the past year called Modern Saints, Missions from God. Right. And the idea I believe you were part of that, William. The idea was quoting Pope Francis, who said that every saint is a mission from God to a particular time. And so while we venerate I think venerate's the right word, the saints from all the past centuries, but really this last century, the saints have distinct messages for us and how we can live within this modern context. And it doesn't stop with them. Every single one of us have the same call to holiness. And not all of us are going to be like them because we're supposed to be us. And so how to do that, how to be fully alive while you've got PayPal and Netflix and laptops and, and what, Amazon Prime. How do you be fully Catholic in the first world without a sense of survivor's guilt? I think this is something I've really grappled with is the looking at a lot of the, what is it called? Privilege on one side, like the left, I think we'll call it, if you're given too much when you're born, it's called privilege. You should be, right. They sort of, you're trained to be ashamed of that and so on. And then on the other side, I see a lot of resentment and isolation or whatever, and unwilling to accompany or share and justify the fact that I've earned what I have. And there's a truth in that too. But I think the Catholic way in the middle is the call of the saints, which is I've been given a ton. I'm not called to be ashamed of that. I am called to steward that carefully, whether it's my time, talents, charism, material goods. It's up to me to decide what am I going to do with that. So I think not have this sense of survivor's guilt, or this sense of I earned this and I don't have to share, but how do I choose what to do with it all within this modern context? And again, it's a wonderful discussion because we've never been in this situation in human history, with everything that has changed and the growth of a global human family.
So how many, man, do you know how many users Smart Catholics has now?
We're almost at 4,000, and
Okay.
we have about 1,000 who are regularly active, and there's like 300 to 400 who are, even more active. And then of course there's about 100 who are like in there like almost every day and liking stuff and commenting and sharing resources.
That's a good group of like-minded people that just get in, like you said, make friends and go out into the world and bring Christ to the world. That's great. So, Dominic, any parting words about Smart Catholics, maybe where they could find the website and join?
Sure. smartcatholics.com is the easiest place to go to. There's a big red button that says join the free community. And once you're in, you can then add any kind of group you like to your free membership. You'll see them all over there's a link on the left. On the inside, you can see all the different groups that are there. And it's a perfect way to meet people who are all over the world. We have people from Australia, from the Philippines, some from mid-Russia somewhere, and plenty from, of course, the United States, because that's kind of where we started, a bunch from the UK. But I think that's the smartcatholics.com. And the beauty of it is we've tried to identify a very clear culture. We can't be everything for everyone. That's what your local parish is for. That's what your diocese is for. We're here to do a particular thing and to work with a particular kind of people, and broad enough to where I think there are enough Catholics out there that are hungry and looking for this kind of thing. But I think a lot of us have disengaged and just leaned back from social media and just thrown ourselves back into our lives and our families. And I think that's a shame. I think the world needs what we have to give. The world needs who we are. And that's the goal of our community. How do we help empower and encourage that? And it might take a while, but that's kind of the charism we're working with.
Great. Again, the website is smartcatholics.com. I encourage everyone listening to go check it out. Dominic, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it.
That was a pleasure. Thanks for having me, William.
Yeah, my pleasure. God bless.
God bless.